In 2007, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia could not pay their rent in San Francisco, so they bought 3 air mattresses, set them up in their apartment, and rented space to attendees of a design conference because every hotel in the city was fully booked. No office, no investors, no business plan. They charged $80 a night and called it Air Bed and Breakfast. That became Airbnb, not because they had a perfect product, because they had a real problem, a real customer, and the willingness to act. At Apex Founder, that is the only kind of launch that matters. Reid Hoffman, the co-founder of LinkedIn, said something that changed how the best builders in the world think about getting started. He said, if you are not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you have launched too late. Most people hear that and think it means ship something broken. That is not what it means. What he was pointing at is something most founders never face directly. The version in your head will always feel more ready than it is. And the longer you wait for it to feel ready, the longer you delay the only feedback that actually matters. Real feedback from real people with real money. The imperfect thing you put in front of a customer will teach you more in 1 week than 6 months of planning ever will. That is the whole point. Here is the myth that keeps more founders stuck than anything else. The belief that you need to have everything figured out before you start. The logo, the website, the business plan, the perfect product, the brand people already recognize, the funding that makes it all feel real. None of that is what gets a business off the ground. Every single one of those things is built after you find your first customer, not before. I have watched founders spend months building a product for a customer they had never actually spoken to. I have seen brilliant people raise money before they had any proof that a single human being would pay for what they were building. And I have seen more ideas die in notebooks than I have ever seen die in the market. Because the market at least gives you an answer. The notebook just lets you keep believing. Steve Blank and Bob Dorff, in their book The Startup Owner's Manual, built an entire methodology around this exact problem. They call it customer discovery. The core idea is simple, but most founders skip it entirely. Before you build anything, before you write a single line of code or spend $1 on production, you get out of the building and you talk to real people. Not 3 people, not 10 people. Blank and Dorff recommend a minimum of 50 conversations in the early discovery phase. 50, not because 50 is a magic number, but because with 50 conversations, you stop hearing one person's opinion and you start hearing the market speak. You find the patterns, you separate the problem that is real from the problem you wished existed. And here is the part that surprises most founders. Those conversations are not sales calls. You are not trying to convince anyone of anything. You are there to learn. What is the problem? How bad is it? What have they already tried? What would it mean to actually solve it? That information is more valuable than any investor meeting you will ever sit in. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. After Airbnb launched, the product barely worked. Bookings were low. Hosts were not converting. Paul Graham at Y Combinator told them something that changed everything. He said, go to your users, not a survey, not an email campaign, go physically be with the people using your product. In the summer of 2009, Chesky and Gebbia flew to New York and personally visited over 24 hosts. They stayed with them, they watched how they welcomed guests, they observed where things broke down, and they asked one question that became legendary in Silicon Valley. What would the product of your dreams look like? One of those conversations changed their entire business. A host handed them a notebook full of suggestions. That notebook essentially became Airbnb's early product roadmap. But the most important discovery came from just watching. They noticed that the listing photos were terrible, dark, blurry, shot on phones in bad light. So they tested a hypothesis. They hired a professional photographer and reshot the listings in New York themselves. Bookings in those listings went up 2 to 3 times. That is the $0 launch in action. You do not need money to find that insight. You need the willingness to go talk to real people and the discipline to actually listen to what they tell you. The $0 launch comes down to 3 phases. Phase 1 is discovery. Go have 50 conversations, not to pitch, to listen, to find the pattern. What is the problem that keeps coming up? Who has it? How badly does it hurt? What have they already tried that did not work? Phase 2 is validation. Find the people who said the problem was real and ask them if they would pay to have it solved. A verbal yes is interesting. A payment is proof. Phase 3 is delivery. Before you build a system, deliver manually. Do the work yourself, imperfectly, to one customer. Figure out what they actually need versus what you assumed they needed. Then build what scales. Most founders do this completely backwards. They build the system, then look for customers to run through it. Then they wonder why the system does not work. The answer is usually that they never talked to enough people before they started building. Let me tell you about the first deal I ever closed that was not my job to close. I was working for an HR services company, payroll administration, headhunting, HR consulting. Through my network, I became aware of a company based in New York that was looking to expand into the region. They offered business process outsourcing services, and I knew exactly who they should be talking to. So I made an introduction. No mandate, no budget, no formal arrangement, just a connection I thought could create value for both sides. While that deal was developing, I also learned they were looking for a business development director. They had already hired a headhunter. The process was well underway. I saw some of the candidates they were considering: MBA credentials, enterprise sales backgrounds, impressive track records. I was younger, less credentialed on paper. Not even in the conversation. At least that is what I told myself. Here is what actually happened. During a working lunch where we were negotiating the payroll administration piece of the deal, the company I had been helping offered me the job. Not because I applied, not because I outperformed the other candidates on paper, but because they had watched me work. They saw someone who identified a problem, built a connection, structured a deal, and delivered value before anyone asked him to. They were not hiring a resume, they were hiring someone they had already seen in action. And here is something I still have to remind myself of today. Even if others are smarter than you or more connected than you, no one should outwork you. Talent will get you places, but tenacity, grit, and discipline will make you stand apart. That deal was my first $0 launch. No budget, no title, no permission, just a problem I could see, a connection I could make, and the willingness to act before I felt ready. This week, not someday, this week. Step 1. Write down one problem you have personally seen that you believe you could solve better than how it is currently being solved. One sentence, one problem. Step 2. Build your list of 50, not a target market. 50 actual people with names who might have that problem right now. Friends, former colleagues, people in your network. This is your customer discovery list. Step 3. Start the conversations this week. Not to pitch. To learn, ask them about the problem. Ask how they currently deal with it. Ask what it costs them to not have a better solution. Ask what they would pay if the problem were truly solved. You will not close a deal from these conversations. You will do something more valuable. You will find out if there is a deal worth closing. That information is worth more than any business plan. You could spend 6 months writing. The free 30-day business audit in the description below includes an exercise that walks you through exactly how to structure your first customer discovery conversations. No cost, no fluff. Next week, I am sharing the real story of my first actual client. What we had, what we did not have, the doubt we felt, and what closing that first deal actually taught us. If you want that story, subscribe. New video every week. If this gave you something real today, hit like. It helps more founders find this content. And if you have a question about your own business, drop it in the comments below. I read every single one and I answer. I will see you next week. Build precise,